when I finished up in practice, my wonderful assistant and PA coordinated a project for everybody who wanted to write a note to me to thank me for being part of their world and their life and their family's life over many years, over 20 odd years. It was this huge book. She bound it up for me. And my last day of practice, I'm reading through this, I'm just bursting into tears where I'm just reminded back of the memories and the love and the appreciation people have for what we expressed and did out of wanting to help and serve, and how much value and gratitude they had for that. So to actually see it, to receive it, it's a beautiful gift. And carrying on from what you said with your teacher, it'd be a wonderful thing to receive if you feel that there's someone like that who's really significantly played a big role in your life as well.
Well, welcome to Wabi-Sabi. Jim and I are here once again on a beautiful week. He's in Spain, I'm in Portugal, and it's a beautiful week.
It has been.
I don't know
it
what
has
you
been.
in
And
Spain.
what a week or so it's been for you, Laurence. You've had so much going on. It's actually 2 weeks. So you've got to bring us up to date with what's been going on in your world. And yeah, anybody who's been listening to us for a while would be very excited to hear what's been going on for you.
Yeah. So obviously, in contrast, we actually officially released the podcast this week, and so you guys listening, this will be episode, I have no idea what number, but you're gonna listen to this about 4 or 5 minutes down the track. So it will be kind of weird, but at the same time, this has been a really exceptional week because yes, Wabi-Sabi Podcast went out live. But more importantly, I think Jim was hinting at was the two significant things. My house was about to close, and I've been going back and forth with this. Like everybody's like, "Oh, you must be so excited." I'm like, "No, not really," because I've learned to not be excited about the house closing because I've been expecting it 6 months ago, and every time they say, "Oh, just 2 more weeks, just 2 more weeks," and when you hear that 2 more weeks, a few more times, you're just like, "Okay, I know what that 2 weeks means. It just means like it's coming later." So it doesn't actually mean 2 weeks. So we've been waiting for about 6 months, and we have officially, actually the day of recording is very close to my wife's birthday. It's tomorrow, and we bought this house about a year ago, and we moved in literally shy of a year into this house. And so that was huge. But here's the thing. We didn't know when the house was going to close. We knew it was going to be closed, but it was also a 2-week holiday for us here for the kids. And we're like, do we wait? Do we hang on? I'm like, that's not really fair on the kids nor on us that we're holding on to something that may or may not happen for the last 6 months. So like, just let's screw this. We're going to screw this off and let's go book a holiday. So we did. We went away to Italy, a few days in Lake Como, absolutely beautiful. Venice, and then Milan, and then came back. And I felt, honestly, 7 days felt like it was 2 weeks holiday. And it was it was beautiful. It was great to be with the family. And I really enjoyed it. And then the day after I booked it, the bank calls and said, "We're ready to settle." I'm like, "Of course we are. Of course we are." And I'm like, "Well, I can either cancel the trip." I'm like, "No way." I'm like, "You're just going to have to do it after I get back." And the sellers were going to be away. Anyways, it worked out. And after I got back, the day after we got back, we literally moved in. We signed the paperwork, and so we've been moving in for the last few days, and we're still kind of in the process of doing that. So it's been a big week.
It has been, Laurence, and that's right. A couple of weeks ago when we recorded last, or a few weeks ago we recorded last, I should say, you said, "Listen, I can't do it next week because I'm going away." So I got bumped for a better offer, which was Lake Como, and I don't blame you. I don't hold it against you. That was really wonderful. I really love you to talk about, and you hinted at that a little bit, is the contrast. Like the high highs and the low lows, and how you manage expectations. And we've talked about it before about basically priming yourself to a specific date that comes and goes, and then you set yourself up for disappointment. So how did you keep? Because this, I work in finance. I understand the concepts of delayed settlement, but this was outside of expectations. So what did you have to do and who did you need to be in order to keep reestablishing or just maintaining your headspace in the game and staying in the game without going sort of crazy?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because the contrast that my wife and I have had over the years. So just to kind of put in, let's just so that's a background story for those who are just joining us for the very first time. I've been in Portugal for almost a year now. So about 11 months, and in that time, we've moved 6 times. So that's on average about every 2 months we're moving. And this is our sixth home that we moved into, and hopefully they'll be the last for a while. And we've been moving and living in out of Airbnbs, which is a very costly exercise, but also just draining. And in terms of, space, and also moving and constantly lugging luggage around every couple of months or so. And so the expectation when we first arrived was that we were only going to do that for maybe 3 to 4 months. So how did I manage that? I think the mindset required us to do one of two things. One, be bitter, be angry, be frustrated that things weren't going our way. Or two, accept that the reality is the reality that it is, and we have to manage our expectations accordingly. Either way, what I recognize is that you have the matter is that the house wasn't ready, right? Or whatever the expectation I was expecting wasn't going to happen. Whether I'd be angry about it or frustrated with it, or whether I'd be at peace with it, it didn't change the fact the house wasn't ready. Like, it's not going to speed it up in any way. And so I had to come to realization to sit back and just go, well, why be in anger and frustration, constantly? Not that I say I was a Zen Buddhist through this whole process, right? But I feel like Karen and I did a really good job in maintaining our poise through the process, because we just made a choice not to live in that type of state. Yeah. And I think that's a choice. I think that's a choice all of us have at any given moment in time. I'm not saying it was easy. I think it's really extremely hard. But I think most of our stresses in our lives are usually due to unmanaged expectations and our ability to kind of cope with it. And I think personally is that whenever we have these expectations, we can either lower the expectations and maintain the standard, or we just live in constant frustration and fear. And I just didn't want to do that. And so we coped, we adapt. And, as chiropractors and, as healthcare professional, one of the things we talk about a lot is how do we adapt our body to the environment that we live in? And that's, that's a choice that I did. So the mindset I had to switch gears towards is like, okay, well, this is what it is. I don't like it, but it's also out of my control. And so there's these 3 circles I kind of think of my life. And I might have discussed this before, but the 3 circles are: 1, anything that happens in your life usually falls into one of these 3 circles. Things that you can control, things you can't control, and things you can have influence on. And in this matter about the house, I had no control over that. I might have had a little bit of influence on it, might push them harder, but really had no control over it. It was out of because a lot of it was weather and supply chain issues and a whole bunch of things. So what can I control? Well, what I could control was my emotion, how I handle it, my expectations, and how I just deal with people in general. And how can I influence? Well, I can influence maybe putting some pressure on, using lawyers, or putting pressure on them and, ask nicely. Those are things I can have influence on. So I think if you think of life like that, in those 3 buckets, anything that happens to you, put in one of those buckets. Because really, if something falls into the bucket of non-control, that you have no control over, like the weather, like, why put any more energy into it? So that's how I kind of think.
Okay, so I'm curious because, so you got in, and correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes you'll walk in and there's the outcome. You finally get the outcome, and even with the outcome, there's going to be things that it may not be perfect as well, right?
Oh,
so
dude,
you walked into the house, you went,
not perfect.
12 months, woohoo, whatever, and wow, everything's exactly that, like they said, that was going to be like. Everything's perfect. And what was it like?
It wasn't perfect at all. Like, we already had a list, like during final inspection, probably a list of about at least 10 to 15 things that wasn't fixed, corrected, or done yet. Okay. And once you move in, I literally have a list of at least 15 to 20 things to add to that, like little things, but you don't notice it when you're just observing. You notice it when you kind of go, well, this doesn't move well. Like, this door is kind of stuck. Why is that there? Why is the cupboard bent? Like, we literally, in our cupboards, don't have handles on them because they didn't have time. They couldn't, the supply chain, they say, and it's like, okay, they supposed to have cleaned the pool. It's freaking full of pine cones and stuff. And, it's like these little things was really annoying. And this goes to the fact of if you're in a service industry, by the way, any product or service industry, you can have the best product or best service. But if you've done one thing wrong, like just like small little things, these small little things on delivery could really ruin the experience.
Okay.
And we moved it. Like, it's a beautiful home. Don't get me wrong. I want to appreciate this home. It's really nice. It's great. We love it. But that definitely took the shine when I first walked in the house. Things weren't clean, dust everywhere, construction stuff left, like cement left in the garage and drawers. You know what I mean? Like, and it's a brand new home. It's like, it's frustrating to see, and that could ruin the experience of, expecting. It's almost like, can you imagine you bought a brand new car, maybe dream car and stuff, and you showed up at the lot, instead of a Red Bull, like, a red, bow to congratulate you and all that stuff. No, it's just dirty. It's dirt and it's got mud all over it. And they deliver you the keys and go, here you go, sir. Here's your keys to your brand new car. That's what it felt like going to this house after a year. And so, yeah, like I was pretty annoyed with everything, and I still kind of just handling that emotion. But I do have to see the other side. I'm like, okay, these things are going to get fixed. We hope, fingers crossed. But the reality is that I had to step back over the last couple of days and really ask my wife, it's like, what can we appreciate about this moment? Like, what can we really appreciate about this? Like, we're in our house finally, after a year. We're finally in our space. We actually finally have a home. Like, all of these little things that could be overshadowed by all the negative stuff so easily.
It's a really good point that you make there, Laurence, because I guess the essence of our conversation today is going to be around appreciation, gratitude, all those kind of things. And it's all well and good, and it's very easy when you were the last week when you're at Lake Como with your family, looking at some of the most beautiful areas of the world, and appreciating the beauty of that. And it's like, it's wonderful, and it's almost easier. Yet when you are in a scenario that challenges you, where things aren't exactly as you expected, that really, basically you're at your wit's end, that's actually even more, that's what I found. It's actually even more important to find the points of gratitude in those moments to give you some grounding, because otherwise it will spiral you out and just take you down a rabbit hole and a mindset and a narrative that just doesn't serve you. And so that to me is the contrast that I take out of that.
It's so true. Yeah, it's so easy when things are beautiful and everything's going right to find appreciation. But to find appreciation when things are not going right and dark. And that happens every day, right? For most people, like, I mean, if you really think about it, a lot of times we're chasing after a goal. Most of us have goals, and and by in the essence of the word goals, it's something you haven't achieved yet. And so in theoretical talk, I guess, the reality is that you're not there yet. So which means that you can, like, right in this moment, while you're listening to this podcast and watching us, you are somewhat disappointed because your expectation is that I should have been there. Most of us are we should have been there, but we're not. And so it's, how do you handle that situation on a daily basis, and dealing with that disappointment with yourself or with inactions that you may not have taken to get to the goals that you have set for yourself.
Yep.
How do you deal with that?
Look, very, very similarly to that as well too. I give myself a grace period. If I get frustrated, I honor that. I think for a long time, particularly when I was studying a lot of philosophy and Buddhism, I felt that it was almost not right to feel that feeling, and I'd somehow suppress it.
Yeah.
And I'd go, no, but I shouldn't feel angry. And yet I just hadn't worked out that anger, frustration was a natural feeling. And so for me, I allowed myself to express it, to blow through me, and then just move on. And so that to me was a really important component. And so for me, managing my frustrations, I have to have a physical outlet for that. I find that works very well for me, because I have to burn off all this energy first, and then I can get into my head and heart, and I can sit in gratitude. But for me, you know how sometimes when people are in a frustrated, high energy state, they try to direct the thought process for themselves. That works really well. But I think I know myself well enough now to know I've got to go burn some energy. So if I'd work out or go hit something or go and train jiu-jitsu or something like that, burn that excess octane, that fuel out of my system to get to a calmer state, and then I can go, right, okay, let's reload. That's what works for me.
There's two really important things that I want to repeat what you said. I think is really important just to highlight in summary what you said. I think number one is to accept your feelings. I was like you too. Like I was used to push away because I'm the eternal optimist, right? I'm the person who's always happy. I shouldn't feel negative things. But at the end of the day, you're a human being. You're supposed to feel those anger, frustration moments. And to push away, I think, is denying your human experience, a part of your human experience. Like, how do you find love without knowing what, loss is? And I think all those human emotions, the anger, the frustrations, is the contrast to joy. And I think the joy is greater on the other side. Joy and happiness is greater because the understanding and the pain of fear and anger and, and all those negative thoughts. And so when you can have those contrasting feels, like, I think it's important to feel them. But it's what you do with those feelings. That's what's really important. And I like what you said that you kind of did it really fast. And I want to make sure people heard it, is that you gave yourself time, but not too much time, but enough time, whatever that time is. I'm not going to suggest here, like it should be 48 hours or 24. Like it depends on what's going on, but I think it's important to have some sort of time frame at least in your own mind, depending on the things, to going, okay, enough is enough, right? Like enough of being a victim. And it's like, okay, I allow myself to feel being a victim. It's okay to do that. But there's time when you just got to go and switch and then move to take some action other than sitting here being a victim. And I remember that happened to me during COVID. During those years, seems like such a long time ago, isn't it? Just those years. And it was this moment when we were in lockdown, and man, I was struggling. I really struggled. I didn't think I thought I was doing okay, but man, I was battling through it. I don't know what it was, but I really struggled. I think that just the oppression, that, the being told what you had to do and what you couldn't do, like it was brutal. And I didn't realize it took a toll on me until it just started. I just made it aware. It's like, man, I'm not the same person. I'm not showing up for my clients or for my family. I'm feeling anger. I'm feeling frustrated. And I was like, okay, enough is enough. And I remember turning the corner. I'm like, enough. That's when I actually did 75 hard. I'm like, I need to do something to focus my energy on something else because this is not serving me. And I think that's
what I'm talking about. That's exactly the same thing. So I did 75 hard, exactly the same thing. And 75 hard, I did it back to back. So it was 150 odd days straight. I did. Wow. And I was fortunate. I remember where we lived back in Australia, back in Melbourne, we lived right near Albert Park Lake. For anybody who knows that, it's very Baysides where they run the Grand Prix. It's a beautiful precinct of Melbourne. And I was literally like 500 metres away from Albert Park Lake, and I'd be running around the lake every day. And interestingly, I noted that I had that same sort of thing as you, Laurence. I had this undercurrent of frustration that I was trying to manage and deal with, but I didn't know how. And I knew expressing it through exercise was really helpful because it even influenced the music I was listening to. So I'd be listening to music. I'd be listening to Rage Against the Machine while I'm running around the lake, and I'm going, okay, something's not quite right here. I better burn this energy off before I interact with anybody else. So that to me is like, you've got to know yourself. You've got to know who you like. If you're really snappy, for me, I don't use substances to numb those feelings. And a lot of people do if they don't have an outlet or a strategy to dissipate that. I've always used exercise, and I've always used particularly martial arts as a means of expressing that. Now, for a period of time when we couldn't do that, I was suddenly like, what do I do now? So I had to channel that and find meaning in this situation and rewrite the narrative and just try and get control back in self, because I didn't appreciate that either.
Well, that's going back to those three buckets, right? It's like there are things I couldn't control, restrictions, like no matter how much I hated them, it was outside my control. But then I go to, well, what's the things I can control? If I can definitely, no one's going to tell me what to do in terms of my body, in terms of how much I can exercise or, go and actually, move my body and actually start to exercise and burn off that energy. I'm like, okay, well, that's what I can do. No one can tell me what I can put in my body in terms of like food and nutrition. I'm like, okay, that's what I can do. And that's where like the 75 hard got me focused. I'm like, that's what I can control. And I'm going to focus most of my energy on things I can control. And, the bucket of influence was like, who can I influence? Well, it's my clients, my people, my family. And that's what I can do. I mean, I have no power in politicians to move things. And that wasn't my strength. But I knew I can focus on my energy in that. and move away from the things I couldn't
Yeah.
control, because I was putting too much energy on the things I couldn't control.
And that's exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing I did. I'd run around, burn off that energy that wasn't like a toxic energy. And as soon as I'd drop straight into gratitude. Okay, what am I grateful for? So while I'm panting, and I'd pant and go, look, I'm grateful for the air in my lungs. I'm grateful for free. I just rewire that. But I had to down-regulate that stress response in myself first to then be able to do that. And so I've always, like you've just said with the contrasts, I thought that was really quite relevant, because you've got to be able to experience and feel them there to go, okay, that's what that feels like. That's what it feels like. I choose to go down that road, and I choose to go there through these metrics that I find work well for me, and I'm going to keep repeating those.
Yeah, I guess also too, like it's interesting. You sort of said, you didn't use any substance, and and you used the outlet of exercise. And I think, I wonder, I didn't do either. Like, and it's because I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, and it's like, because I don't do those things already, like it wasn't as easy, available for me to do that. And I would imagine for people who, like I said, there's nothing wrong with it, but if you do drink, it may have been easy to just go grab, an extra alcohol to drink to kind of numb that pain, or food, instead of, using the outlet of exercise. We both use exercise. Like, I showed up at the gym, even though it was by myself, because you can only allow, I think, 2 people at the time. And I use the same thing. And I thought not everybody's going to be using exercise. We're just using it just so happens that Jim and I both have exercise as one of our thing to kind of create that outlet for ourselves. And so I think it's important to find what that is for you. So for some people it might be painting. Some people might be meditation. Some people might be, any, like, singing a song, or just, creating songs, or playing guitar, playing a piano. I think whatever outlet it is, I think it's good to know that now when things are not stressful, so that when you are in a stressful situation, you actually have an outlet that you already thought through. Right? Don't wait until you're in the moment of stress to then make a decision, because you're already, just imagine, you're already stressed. Making the best decision probably isn't that would be the right time. I think it's better to make those outlets, known what those outlets are prior to being stressed. And then so when the stress levels are high, then you already have your outlets and options ready available.
A really great bit of advice I had years ago was, you can't set your happiness to everything being perfect, because at any one time things will be up, down, they'll be oscillating. And if you basically tag your happiness to the volatility, and I learned that a lot in practice, particularly because there were some weeks that were up weeks, down weeks. And if you sort of associated your self-esteem, your happiness, your worthiness, your joy to the roller coaster of practice or business or anything, then that's going to take you on a basically roller coaster ride to mental insanity. So I had to find a way of actually being in control of my emotions and regulating my emotions, irrespective of what was going on externally. And that was a really big, important lesson and distinction for me.
I think everybody does that. A lot of my clients do it, and it's hard. I'm guilty of it as well. In the
we
past,
all have
for
been,
sure.
Laurence.
And
We
I
all
probably it. Yeah. And it's amazing how many people fall into that trap, right? Our measurement of happiness is based on the value that, whatever number you have in your head of what you think you should be doing, or how much money you're making and all that stuff. And it's amazing. And we lose sight, when we think about that, lose sight and appreciation of what is happening right now in the moment. And one of the things I shared a video today around when I was in Lake Como.
Yeah, I saw that one. It was great.
I talked about how I was talking about, like, how, when I first moved to Australia, all of these people was like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I'm like, "I'm from Canada." And they're all like, "Wow, I love Canada." And I'm like, "It's Canada." It's like, whatever. Like, what are you talking about? I'm in Australia. Like, you live here. And then once I moved into Australia, and, I tell people from back home, like, "Oh, you moved to Australia?" I'm like, "Oh my God, I would love to go to Australia." Right. And it's so funny. I'm like, you can come anytime. Just buy a plane ticket. And and then when the finishing part was when I was in Lake Como. I looked at that, right? And I'm sure you would too. And you go, "Oh my God, Lake Como, this is like a dream come true. Like, it's so gorgeous and beautiful." And I'm in here in Europe, and, blah, blah, blah. And I'm in Italy. And it's so funny. Like, when we tell other parents, other, people who lived here for a while, like, oh, where are you going for holidays? And they're like, oh, I'm going to Switzerland to go skiing, or I'm going to Italy. I'm just going to Paris. And it's like, for an Australian and a Canadian, or, or an American, or, that is so foreign to us, right? You're like for us to go to Paris, that's a 1 month trip, right? Or like, that's like a saving to get there. That's a lifetime dream. And to like go to Lake Como and all this places, those are like lifetime. But for a European, it's like, it's like going to Bali. Like, it's, you know what I mean? And it's that contrast. It's like, we always trying to think it's so much better over there on that side. And we never really appreciate the things I have. Like, as a Canadian, I never appreciated Canada. And as an Australian, I don't, I at some point I was appreciating Australia, but I definitely, over time, after being 20 years, I didn't appreciate being in Australia.
It's a really good point. It's a really good point you raised, Laurence, because I'd love to talk to the ice cream vendor in Lake Como who is working 16-hour days, and people go, oh, you must love living here. And he'll go, what are you talking about? This is just what I'm so used to. So it's a contrast. And it always used to happen to me because I always wanted to live by the beach and always wanted to live, on the surf coast, on the Sunshine Coast in Australia, or parts of the Mediterranean where it's beautiful and beachy. And I remember saying every time we'd holiday, look, this is where I want to be. And Bettina, my wife, would say, yeah, but if you're still in work mode, you're not actually going to appreciate this as much as you think you do. So I really thought about that. So all our holidays, I would always make sure we would go somewhere on a beach, right beachfront, where I could go in there and spend 3 hours a day, get it out of my system and really appreciate it for the appreciation's sake. And I just found that I got so much more beach time than when I lived in Melbourne right on the beach and I was there every day. I probably didn't use it as much as when I had to go out on holidays to really make an intention to enjoy it.
Well, it's funny because when we went to Venice, right, and I was walking in the streets and I said, I don't know what came over me. I just sort of said to my son, I turned to him like, oh, can you imagine if you just grew up here? Like, if you were a kid, if you were born here, like by some chance you grew up in Venice, like this is not a tourist place where you actually visited. No, this is the place where you as a kid grew up as a baby and grew up here. I wonder what that would be like. He's, what do you mean, Dad? Like, I go, think about it. Like, it's not like playgrounds and grass and stuff. Like, what if you grew up here? Like, what would life will be so different than the life you lived so far? And he goes, yeah, I guess so. And it's funny. We actually did a private tour. We hired a private tour and she took us around for a couple hours, seeing some parts of Venice, because it's all like someone can describe something to me. So I know I'm just looking at things. And funny enough, she's born in Venice. She's a Venetian. And she was describing how, life was like for her, running around as a kid and going to her grandmother's house, and how they had to, they used to deliver like, milk, and they would just pull up the milk from the bottle. And it's like, oh, there you go. Because we as tourists forget, right? People live there. It's not just like a, destination, it is a place where people grew up.
It's not like Disneyland. It's not Disneyland where, like that's the perception sometimes you have. It's like, wow, this is awesome. This is great. And everybody's a character in my story of enjoyment.
Exactly. And it's so funny. That's a great analogy, because Como is the same thing. I was in a hotel and I was walked down the street to the local grocery store to pick up some stuff. I'm like, there's an apartment right there. Like there's a house right there with kids' toys and a kid's thing. And they're just looking over like, oh my, I'm like, to us, it's like, oh my God, you grew up here. Right. We spent thousands of dollars to come here to visit like once, and they live here right there. But like you said, if you ask them, they'd be like,
that's what we do.
This is normal. Like this is what we do.
That's what we do. Right? Yeah, and there's probably these kids are inside looking at it, going, "Mom, Dad, there's more of these visitors just staring at us all." But it's normalization. It's what feels normal to you.
Yeah.
Laurence, I was thinking about, just as you were talking about that, John DiMartini, obviously a professional colleague of ours, always talked about the support and challenge in those situations and scenarios. And any time that you look at your life situation and you feel like there's great support, or great challenge, I should say, where things are challenging and difficult, what helps you equilibrate that or even that out is to look for areas of your world where you're getting support. So, we artificially sometimes addicted to just good emotions and good feelings and want only the good things, not realizing that that's like the universe and life out of balance. It doesn't work that way. There's ups and downs, there's cycles. For every day there is night, for every cold there is heat, and that's just the normal cycle of the universe and life. And that's the scenario. And when we can embrace all parts of that and appreciate, okay, this is a challenging time and I will endure, I will find a way through this. However, to balance this out, there's all these great things that are happening. I think it just helps you to find balance and harmony and sense in what's going on.
And I think it's harder in this day and age as well, because when you are in, just say, you are in a very stressful situation, things are not going right, you may be in the middle of a breakup or, whatever's going on in your life. When you look out into the world, and I mean the social media world, you see everybody being happy and everybody posting their best version of themselves. It almost makes it worse, right? It's almost like I must be the only one going through this and everybody's enjoying themselves, and it creates this this really bad loop and contrast. And so I think it's important for us to kind of recognize the world that we live in and appreciate that it's not the story that you see or feel isn't worse than it actually is. I think it's important to recognize the feeling that you're having, but don't make it worse than it is. And I think
it's funny. I was at jiu-jitsu training a couple of weeks ago, and what's amazing about living in a European city like that is you have international visitors and drop-ins from all over the place. You probably have that same thing in your box as well.
Yeah.
And so we had this guy come in from Finland, and he was training. It was about the day after or a day before. So it was a day after it got released that Finland was the happiest place in the world for about the fourth year in a row. And I quoted this bit of statistic to him, and he had a laugh. He goes, "Really?" He goes, "Am I the only one who's not feeling that? That I'm not like, I just feel so like, how come everybody's happy and not me?" So it was this artificial construct that everybody's happy and everybody's living in Neverland, and
La La Land.
I'm the only one who's actually not finding the peace and joy and harmony. So that's what I was thinking about when you were talking about other people who are going through challenges, thinking it's only you.
Yeah, it's so funny. And one of those things in regards to, like, what we've been talking about appreciation is like finding the appreciation in the joy of life, right? And to finish off that part, about Canada, Australia, and Europe and stuff, it's like we often don't find the success or don't appreciate what we actually have, and because we're always searching for something else, we're always searching further away from us rather than actually finding the appreciation. I think that's what you were mentioning about, like finding the appreciation of what you have right in this moment. And to be honest with you, going back to my trip, I for the first, not the first time, but it really, really hit home for me. And I don't know what it was, but I felt really compelled during this week. I just observed my kids and my family. And it's like the first time in a long time where I didn't do any work. Like I really just didn't even bring my workout clothes. I didn't work out at all. And I just wanted to just spend time with them. And I just saw them play with each other in the train and the plane and just traveling together and just having fun. And it really hit me. I wrote a post about this, was like, there's a concept by Jim Shields, a friend of mine, who said, 18 summers. And it really hit me at that moment. It's like, man, I don't have a lot of time. I don't have a lot of time. I mean, I know there's more than that, but it's like, but it really kind of made me dial down whatever stress I had to really focus on this moment and be present with my kids, be present with my family, and just enjoy the moment. And I think that's one of the reasons why the week felt like 2 weeks. It was just like seeing the laughters and the pictures that we had, because those are going to be burned in our memories for a very long time.
Well, that was the appreciation of the magical moments. And they are magical moments, man. And when I look back now, I have references and pictures in my mind of experiences that we've had that no one can ever take away from me. And they were reinforced by quality time. So I get that, and I get that why that's really important. And that's appreciating those moments. It can be, like you said, in Lake Como, it could be in your backyard, pitching a tent with your kid and just having a conversation about what's going on for them, or just, a conversation with a friend over a cup of coffee, and just appreciating those magical moments. And I think it's actually interesting. Like I'd love to take that theme on and tell you a little bit about why today's a significant day for me as well too, Laurence, because it's along that theme, right? So today is a day, it's a birthday of a friend of mine who passed away. And the backstory to this is really right in this area of appreciating every moment, every magical moment, because you don't know how long they're there for. And so it's a story of Adam, and I do get emotional about this. But Adam was a fantastic guy who I trained jiu-jitsu with. And ever since met Adam, this is going back 10, 12 years, he always was a guy who had a vision. You know, he was strong in corporate, but he also had this other part of himself. You know, he trained in martial arts, but he had this social conscience and wanted to bring a jiu-jitsu school and run his own school and helped kids get on track with nutrition and get them on track with life, you know. So really kind of harnessing the power of connection, good food, martial arts, and just turning life on for kids. And he was instrumental in guiding a whole lot of young men and women back on track. You know, he was that solid mentor kind of a person. And so he was in Melbourne, trained with in Melbourne for many, many years, and then he moved up to Brisbane to be closer to his family. And he continued on the chapter of our school. All right, so at that time there was only, there was only 3 schools in Australia, and he was about to set his school up, and he had a grand opening. And let's say it's Saturday. It's on a Saturday. So on Saturday there was going to be this big unraveling. He's getting his accreditation. He was getting it upgraded, so he's actually up-ranked, and it was a massive, massive moment. And on Friday, I was due to fly up early Saturday morning and then be there for the ceremony. Friday night, his best friend, who was also a jiu-jitsu guy as well, flew up, and they were training. And they were talking just before they got off the mat. They were like, Adam, I can't believe this has happened. And Adam's going, yeah, I know, all this vision. This is like 15 years in the moment. It was all going to happen. And they went in and trained on the mat. They rolled pretty hard. And literally Adam got off, after they finished the session, Adam finished the session, got up and dropped dead on the mat. He literally passed out, you know, and in front of his whole school. And the tragical part about that is his best mate at the time, Shane, he tried to resuscitate him, and he couldn't. And Shane tormented himself for many, many years. And, you know, a couple of years ago, he took his own life. He just could not deal with the impact of that. And that story is a really tragic one. And why it's relevant today is because it would have been Adam's birthday today. And so the people who know him and hold, you know, a light in his honor. But it really highlighted to me, you know, the day after this happened was when everything was going to be unveiled. The school, his grading, what he dreamed of, and he just didn't get to see it. It was a day of. So it was when I flew up, I got to the set, it was the most somber day you can ever possibly imagine. And it really shifted a lot of my mindset to finding the joy in all moments, even if they're tough, because the end point, yes, it may have there, but that end point might be one day beyond the day you expire, and you never actually get to physically see that. So I really rewired my joy and happiness around the process as much as possible, as opposed to the outcome. And because the outcome sometimes, when you're trying to do big things and when you're trying to do legacy stuff, you may never get to see the impact of what it is that you're doing. You plant the tree and it's going to take 50 years to grow. You may not be there, but you've got to find the joy in that process on the day-to-day. Otherwise, you'll never fulfill yourself.
Yeah, that's a powerful story and tragic as well at the same time. But yet, like, we want to be able to take, I don't know about you, but anytime I hear a story like that, and especially when someone I know, or, you know, like in this case, you know, I take these moments to it, and the question is, why does it take moments like that to really kind of shake us up, right? Because life moves on so quickly, and I don't know, like for me, it definitely, those moments are the ones that really kind of I put myself in pause to find reflection. And the reason why I do that is because it's to honor the person, right? Not to honor the person because because they gave us a gift. You know, as tragic as it is, that, you know, that thing that happened to them is a moment for me to reflect upon my life so that I can improve and get better. And I want to honor that. And I really cherish those moments to make sure I go, okay, let's find those appreciation. And I love the fact that you just said about the process, because we're never going to find it. We're never going to see the outcomes of what we do. And if you're lucky, yeah, sure, we get to see some outcomes, and they're awesome. They're brilliant. And sometimes it's just, unfortunately, it's well beyond, your ability and length of time. And I don't know, like, I'm gonna shift gears here a little bit for you, but that story, your friend, and what did you like for you? You obviously took away from the process and focusing on that, but how has that shaped you in terms of how you now interact with life?
Oh, massively. And in terms of, if I didn't get to see tomorrow, I think that I don't want to leave anything unsaid. I don't want to leave things so open-ended that, someone goes or I go and there's the torment. Like, the part that I really take out of it was the incompletions for Shane, the incompletions that created for him, where he just couldn't, he felt powerless, all those things. So to me, it's shaped me in a lot of ways in that if I stop putting off things, the one day type situations, that one day becomes 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, two, never happens. And so to me, I really started bringing experiences forward to appreciate them earlier. And, I always had a delayed gratification element. I could do that. I could discipline myself to it. I got to the point where I went, okay, that's good up until the point where it doesn't serve you anymore. So I started to appreciate things more in the moment. So that was how it shaped it. I think for me, it also made me acutely aware of my own mortality. And so, I take my heart rate variability measurements all the time, every day. And if there's days where I get a reading that says, hey, listen, you need to just back the truck up a little bit, I actually listen to that. So I've had to really evaluate just my whole bullet a gate approach and listen more to life. So that's in there. I've slowed down in certain things and I've gone, okay, look, you can let go and you can surrender the stress or the emotion or the panked up, because it really doesn't matter, really. And also just to appreciate things sooner rather than later. They're probably the big three things that I can tangibly relate back to that experience, which is relevant to what we're talking about today.
Yeah, powerful. I'm going to ask you a weird question.
Definitely.
If tomorrow is the last day for you, would you be okay?
Yeah. And I'll tell you why, because I've had the gift of seeing my kids grow up. I've had the gift of knowing what it's like to feel unconditional love. Those parts are there. And I also went for it when the opportunity came knocking on my door. And so there's no part of me now. For a long time, I probably thought about, gee, wouldn't it be great if, I'd love to do that. And right now I'm actually doing what I want to be doing. It might not be exactly at the stage where I know where it's going, but no, I don't have the regret. I can't look back now and go, I wish I had moved to an opportunity, the other side of the world. If it came, I wanted to explore. I look at this and go, okay, within reason, I'm now doing things that I want to do. And while I want to grow and still be around for a long time to contribute, I don't have the incompletions that I would have, say, even 2 years ago.
Yeah, interesting.
That's a powerful question. Let me reflect that back and ask you, Laurence, same sort of thing. So how?
No, I'm going to deflect.
I'm going to deflect.
No, I'm not just joking. I'm joking.
How would you answer that?
I'll be fine. I'm good with that. And the reason why I asked the question was because I want to talk about why, because I expected that from you and I knew my answer. Now, of course, do I want to live till I'm 100? Absolutely. Would I be disappointed that yeah, of course. Like, especially, what you just sort of said, hit me hard, actually. It was, my kids are still young, they're 14 and 12, and I still got a lot of life left, and I wish I could, it would be very disappointing not to be able to see some of that, right? And so, however, I'm good. I would be good. And the thing that I want to talk about is why would we say that? Like, I want to talk about what got us, what decisions have we made, or what mindset that we have to have for both of us to answer that question that way, right? Because the reality is like none of us want to die. But the one truth that we all know is that we're all going to die.
That's right.
And so I think, and I'll start first, and maybe you can add on to it. Like, I think one of the reasons why we are able to say that right now, at least I feel like it's the right thing. It's not the right thing to say. I do feel it. That's my honest answer. I'm not just making it up for the podcast or anything. And the reason I can feel that is because I made choices so that I can have as little regret as much as possible. Now, do I have regrets? Of course. Do I wish to achieve more? Absolutely. Do I have things I'm striving for like you do? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not there yet. But I don't think that will ever end. But have I made good enough choices so far that I'm happy with? And it's minimizing that regret and that I'm happy with. And I think that's what would be my answer to why I would answer that way. And I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Along the same lines, I think that, I loved my career in healthcare for a long time. I had the blessing, like you, to have such a huge impact on the health and well-being of our community. And I never took it for granted. There was also a part of me that knew there were other elements of myself. Like I've always admired someone who went, I'm the one thing I'm going to do in my life, and that's all. And I've always admired that because, and I know, I've had this discussion with many people, and people go, when you have that single-minded focus, it helps you do incredible things. And I agree. However, I appreciate there are different parts of me that I needed nurturing and fulfilling. And the entrepreneurial or business side of it has always been running parallel. And for me to be doing what I'm doing and having the freedom and the flexibility to live my life the way that I have, to really go for it, that I didn't realize how important that was until you've just asked me that, So there would have been, had you asked me that question while I was back in Australia, there were parts that I just wasn't expressing, even if it's not about endpoint, have you achieved the outcome, but it's like, hey man, did you back yourself? Did you listen to that inner voice that said, this is great, however, there's another part of you that you're not nurturing. It could be a creative element. It could be the corporate person who suddenly decides, I want to start a nursery, or those kind of things. And to me, I've been true to myself. And so that's why I feel I could answer that question. There's so much things that I still want to do and achieve and that are undone, but at least I feel like I'm congruent with who I am, what I stand for, and what's important to me. And where that goes, sometimes that's out of my control. But I'll try and focus and influence what I can as much as I can for as long as I can.
Yep, agreed. And I think one of the things that for me was impact, and I think the impacts for you too as well, is that I be okay to leave now. Not that I want to, but I'll be okay with it because I know I've done enough. Could I do more? Yeah, but I've done enough to make a difference in someone's life. I'm not talking like, I don't know if it's the one person. I know at least one person that has been impacted, changed their life because I existed. And I'm good with that. And I don't know if I told the story. I don't think the story came true. Like, I got an email maybe 2 weeks ago. And the email was, hey, Laurence, I'm not sure you remember me, but I saw you as a patient when I was 17 years old. This is 10 years ago. And, about 10 years ago. And just wanted to, and he just gives me his life story. He was a soccer player and actually went back to the UK to go play soccer. But then his life spiraled out. I think his girlfriend left him after 2 days, and he, went to, just binge drinking and eating and just grew fat and, just living like just a terrible life. And he goes, but he always remembered, like what I said to him when I was adjusting him, the confidence, the mindset, and turn things around, nutrition and all that stuff. And he goes, okay. Then he switched that around, took it upon himself. And then like over the next 10 years, he got the dream job, got got his life back and back on track, his health back on track. And, he's got to this point. He's like, I think he's about 28 now. I've achieved everything I wanted, but I'm not happy. Yeah. What do I do? And so I thought I'd email you and ask you. And it's like, I was like, whoa, I haven't actually had a chance to have a call with him yet, but because he's working in the mines. And so I'm going to have a chat with him, hopefully, in a couple of weeks time. And, but to me, I was like, oh my God, right? Like that is one of the greatest gifts I've had. Like, I've had many of those, moments where, patients or people come to you and say something to you and go, like, you changed my life, in some way. And I would have never known. You talk about like things you just wouldn't know, like the impact you would have. That's one of them. And that's one of like, I don't know, all the other people that, that would never say anything. And I think since we're talking about appreciation here, this is just a good reminder. Like it had an impact on me. So his email had an impact on me to go, oh, I am doing something right, or did something right, in my life. And this is 10 years ago, but still, like, it's like I'm on the right path. And it's a good reminder, right? Because sometimes we forget that the things that we do every day, recording this podcast, it might be someone who's listening to this and go, man, that episode, right? That changed me, and there's many of those type of stories. Like it's going to happen. And I think it's important to remind people to go, if there's a significant person in your life that had made an impact in your life, take the moment maybe just to send them an email, write a letter, make a phone call with just pure intention, just saying, thank you. I did that. Actually, sorry to make this story a little longer, a different story, but
hey, it's your podcast. You go.
I'm going to take whatever time I want. There was a moment when I was in grade 8, I was a B student at that time. I was really good at math, but I was terrible at everything else. The only A's I ever got from grade 4 when I moved back from Hong Kong to Canada, from grade 4 to grade 7, all the A's I got was the 3 A's in math, and everything else was a B and a C. In grade 8, there was a teacher. Her name is Mrs. Antown. And for whatever reason, I don't know if she did this on purpose or whatever, but I started getting A's in a whole bunch of things. At that moment, I was probably, 18? Oh, no, I was about 13 maybe, grade 8, so about 13, about 13 years old. Those A's that she gave me all the confidence in the world for some reason at that age, and going, I am smart. I can do this. And I went into high school from grade 9 onwards. I've had straight A's ever since, through university, to high school, to university, and then chiropractic college. And it was because I had a story I told myself, but it stemmed from her confidence in me. She saw something in me. And I remember, and this is like, I did this maybe 5 years ago or something. So this is going back, I don't know, 25 years, maybe, like, later, or 30 years later. Yeah, 30 years later, I got my dad to find out if he can track her email down. And sure enough, I got her email, and I actually sent her an email and told her that story. And I actually got on the phone call with her too, as well, on Skype and on Zoom or whatever it was, and just reflected of my thank and appreciation. And she remembered me, and she just talked about, she became a principal and also so forth. It was just really interesting because so that's my story is telling you, please take that moment. It is such a powerful, not just for yourself, but it's such a powerful thing for the other person on the other side, no matter how long ago it was. I would imagine she would be appreciative of that, knowing that she made a difference. At least one student's like, my career, my life, it's not the only thing, right? But it's definitely one of the trajectory points that happened in my life. That has
I love that.
For me.
I love that because it highlights not only the appreciation of self, but appreciating other people and the gift they gave you sometimes. And gosh, Laurence, that's probably a podcast episode in itself of the messengers and the angels that they come at the right time, that whisper and give you that support and believe in you greater than you're feeling in yourself at that time. And that's just enough to elevate you to believe, I think any time that I see a story along those lines where someone triumphs over adversity and triumphs despite everything externally, not even supporting that even being possible, but just one person believing in them, and being that's the difference that makes a difference. And being grateful for those type of people in our world is special and wonderful. And I love the fact that you were able to give the gift back to this teacher to go, thank you. I really appreciate you. And, this is the outcome of everything that you invested in your students. Thank you. And it's paying it forward. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And I would really encourage anybody listening, like if this speaks to you in some way, I'd love for you to do it. I'd love to, hear, like, it is not really to get a response. It's really more for you to just put more love and thank you back into the gratitude into the universe and provide that forward, because I think it can shift someone's life. I mean, I know that how much that email or those type of, emails or letters come to me, and what that means to me. I've kept a lot of those letters from my patients. I actually found them when I moved, and it's like, oh crap, like, man, it shifts you, right? It moves you. You're like, man, you forget about that. And those are the only ones who actually said thank you, right? Those are the ones who actually mentioned something. And I know there's other ones that just haven't had the opportunity or the time. So I would definitely encourage you to, if this speaks to you as an audience, please, say thank you to someone that you feel appreciated. It could be your parents, it could be an uncle, it could be an aunt or a grandfather, grandmother, or whoever. I think that it would change their life. It would add to their life.
It's so true. It's beautiful to receive that, Laurence. I'm going to finish up by saying that when I finished up in practice, my wonderful assistant and PA coordinated a project for everybody who wanted to write a note to me to thank me for being part of their world and their life and their family's life over many years, over 20 odd years. And she it was this huge book. She bound it up for me. And my last day of practice, I'm reading through this, I'm just bursting into tears, where I'm just reminded back of the memories and the love and the appreciation people have for what we expressed and did out of wanting to help and serve, and how much value and gratitude they had for that. So to actually see it, to receive it, it's a beautiful gift. And carrying on from what you said with your teacher, it'd be a wonderful thing to receive if you feel that there's someone like that who's really significantly played a big role in your life as well.
Well, on that note, this podcast about appreciation. We, Jim and I, both appreciate all you listeners, listening to this and sharing this podcast with everyone. I know that we wouldn't be here unless, someone there is listening on the other end of it and are finding value of it. If it does, if this speaks to you, please, share this with others and comment and, like and share YouTube, Spotify, wherever you hear or see these podcasts. Please continue onwards, because those little comments here and there encourages us to continue doing what we do. And it reminds us that this is important work. So until next time, we'll see you next time on the Wabi-Sabi Podcast.